Hi, comic book fans, and welcome to another edition of the Price Variance. It's Monday night, and it's the Price Variance. And tonight, for one night only, Allan and I have become James Gunn. Yes, tonight we are doing a program of if I was James Gunn, I would. Okay, so James Gunn, for those of you who are not aware, has just become the joint Kevin Feige is another guy who's joining him, but he's basically been put in charge of the DC universe, the cinematic universe. So he's got a lot of control. He's settling in. I think he's been doing it for 3 or 4 weeks now. He hasn't made any big announcements, but he's dropped a couple of clues about what characters might be heading our way. Strangely enough, Mr. Terrific and the Spectre.
And I heard Lobo as well.
And Lobo, possibly, yes. So, so that's what we're doing tonight. On Alan's channel, we've got multiple personality disorder. So on Alan's channel, we were what we would do if we were Kevin Feige. So we've already sorted out the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So on my channel, we're going to be sorting out the DC Cinematic Universe. So, Alan, 3 things that you would do if you've just been appointed, you've arrived at DC. It's in a bit of a mess. We've cancelled quite a few films recently. We've got quite a few films scheduled and TV series scheduled. Would you cancel all of them? Would you start again, or what would you do?
Well, okay, so I heard that Green Lantern was canceled.
Oh, I
Is
didn't.
it completely?
That's the TV series.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard that. That was still on the list when I.
I wasn't sure if it was on the list or not on the list. If it is not on the list, I'd put it back on the list. I really think that they should go ahead with the Green Lantern one. Yeah, I mean, one thing that they've done at DC is they've already cleaned house. They've done some of the stuff that we would have done if we were Kevin Feige. When we're
Well, it's the Warner Brothers guy, new guy at Warner Brothers, who's appointed
yeah,
James Gunn. He
yeah,
stopped a number of the projects.
yeah. So I
They
think
weren't
that was
ready.
good. So they're already on the right track. But learn from that. So when I watched the Peacemaker show, and this is really what I kind of want to say is like, as my first point, there was elements where I could see that there was a bit of an agenda being dipped in. And I'm not sure if that was because James Gunn was receiving pressure from people within the company, that there is that agenda still being pushed in DC. If you read the comics at DC, there's definitely an agenda there. And I'm not sure if that was people influencing James Gunn in a negative way, if it or if it's James Gunn that also has that kind of attitude within his own writing. So if it's other people, don't be influenced by those as James Gunn. Like take the initiative. I think he can produce great stuff if he just does it based on his own what he thinks is the right way to do it. So trust yourself. Like that'd be the first thing I would do as James Gunn. I would trust myself that I made good things in the past, and use that same formula to make good things going forward. And don't be influenced by these kind of people that push an agenda. Already, I've been signaled by the high ups at DC that they're against the agenda. I would, have the fortitude to continue that vision. So that's where I'd go as my first thing as James Gunn. So
Right.
just trust.
So I'm James Gunn. Okay. There's
Mhm.
there's loads of stuff going on. Even though they've cancelled 4 or 5 things, there's still about 7 or 8. There's a new Doom Patrol series about to come out.
Yeah.
There's a new Teen Titans television series coming out. We've got a Flash movie still scheduled. So there's quite a few, and there's a lot of opportunities. James Gunn is not going to direct everything. This is not James
No.
Gunn being brought in as a director. He might direct 1 or 2 things, but there's no way he can direct everything. So
Mhm.
my first thing I would do if I was James Gunn is I would get some great creators and storytellers working for me. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
I know James Tinian, for instance, has got a couple of things he's been talked to about. For me, if you look at what works, for me, Neil Gaiman's The Sandman was one of the
Yep.
best TV series I've seen for a long time. Now, I think they've said scheduled a season 2 for that. And one of the reasons I think that worked is because they had Neil Gaiman involved in it,
Hmm.
overseeing it, saying this has got the right feel and look to what my original creation. And I would, if I was James Gunn, I would do very similar things. I'd give much more authority to the original creators. So I would bring in some of these great storytellers, James Tinian, um, Neil Gaiman.
Hmm.
I'd even, I'd
Alan
even, I'd
Moore.
even see if I could get Alan Moore back on board. I know he
Yeah,
hates
yeah, yeah,
DC, but he doesn't
yeah,
hate
yeah.
James Gunn. He doesn't hate the new team. Could you get Alan Moore back on board and get him to do V for Vendetta again, or get him to do an Alan
That'd be
Moore's
awesome.
Watchmen? That would be exciting.
Hmm.
So I would find these creative people and I would get them involved in the projects. And he's got to find some direct, he's got to find the next James Guns, he's got to find the directors. So I would be looking at the indie film scene, and I would be trying to identify people who've got a voice, who are going to tell a different story. So for
And
me,
tell
the
it well.
first, yeah, and tell
Yeah.
it well. So for me, if I was James Gunn, I'm not going to direct it. I can't do it. I can direct
Hmm.
maybe a couple of films every 2 or 3 years, but I can't do the whole of the DC universe. So I have got to have talent working for me, and I've got to give that talent the freedom to create. No
Hmm. Very
agendas,
good point.
no strings. You go off and tell your story, yeah, and I'll support you. Now, that's what I would do if I was James Gunn, because I think that's the way you get the best out of people, by giving them the creative license to tell the story they want to tell. Proven people who you trust, um, and get them involved and get them directing the project. So that's the first thing I do, is get a great team of creators around me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I was kind of going with just trust myself kind of thing in my vision, and I get your point. Your point is really great. I definitely that is something that he needs to do. My second point is there's a whole bunch of stories that I'd like to tell, and I think one of the things that DC needs to learn, and kind of similar to bringing in those team of great people, is what worked at Marvel. Like, I really think one of the problems that DC had is it tried to rush stories. So it was trying to do the same kind of build up that that you saw with Infinity War, um, but they never develop each of the characters very quickly. They usually give them a one-off film. They never really go like 3, 4 films into that character so that people really understand that character. They have a tendency of rushing everything. Um, One of the things I would say is, hey, James Gunn, you worked at Marvel. You did, Guardians of the Galaxy. You did stuff with Marvel. Take what you learned that was positive from Marvel and apply that to
Yeah,
DC.
that's a good point.
If they kind of build those characters up, build that, and then work towards some kind of bigger project. I think they have a tendency of jumping to the bigger project without having laid that foundation. So I think that would be something that I would try to bring over into DC.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good point. So my second thing is almost the opposite of what I said at the MCU, where I said
okay.
I don't think they should go down the horror route. The
Mhm.
opposite, I think, is true for DC.
It
I
might
think
work more.
DC
Yeah.
DC has it definitely got to go into the horror area. It's historically done. It's had Vertigo, then it's had DC Black Label. It has got a mountain of really good horror stuff to work on. They've got great characters. There's a whole range. I mean, there's Justice League Dark. There's countless characters they
Mhm.
can use. They
Yeah,
are
I'd love to
doing
see
they
Justice
are
League Dark
doing a
personally.
second John Constantine film. Yeah, That's already with Keanu Reeves. So, that is horror.
Mhm.
And that's big horror, deep, really horrific stuff. And I think they can go down the horror route. I think they have a horror arm. Let's see the Spectre done properly. We've never really had the Spectre
Never
on the big
really
screen.
had, yeah.
So the fact that he's mentioned the Spectre for me, that's definitely a character that I think could be developed up.
Mhm.
Swamp Thing's had a few goes at life, but hasn't really taken off. Do it properly. Have a look at how they were doing Man Thing
You
over at
know,
Marvel.
I'm going to push back on that. I actually liked the Swamp Thing series.
Oh,
I thought it was
okay. I
okay.
watched half of it. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, yeah.
The recent one that got cancelled.
Yeah, the recent one. Yes, the recent one. But I don't know why they canceled it. I
I'm
felt
not
like,
sure either. Because
yeah.
have some
So
good actors in
that
it.
was
Have
kind of
some good actors in it.
yeah, it was good. I actually enjoyed it. So
Well, anyway,
I just
so
wanted to say that.
there's some great opportunities, and there's one-off stuff. Like I said, bring the creators in. There was
Mhm,
Tom what's his name, Tom King, who's Stephen King's son, has done quite a lot of
mhm.
stuff for DC
Oh
Black
yeah,
Label.
yeah,
Basket Full of Heads is a great story.
yeah.
Get
There's some really great stuff.
Tom King in and get him working with a director to do Basket Full of Heads. There's even a second
That'd be
film
funny.
there with Refrigerator Full of Heads. And those will be just great schlocky
Mhm,
horror movies, just standalone. You haven't got to develop any characters that people need to understand. It's just a horror movie, with a creator who understands horror. So for
mhm.
me, there's a whole catalogue of stuff that they could do on the horror. There's the whole of the Constantine stuff. There's all the Preacher stuff. There's all the Swamp Thing stuff. They've got a huge catalogue of
Catalog.
stuff that they
Yeah,
could go for. So for me,
yeah.
if I was James Gunn, I would be setting up a horror team. The Constantine's already commissioned, but I'd be saying, we can do horror really well.
So yeah, so I would just build on that. Like my third point was like one of the mistakes that actually was made at Marvel, not DC, but like was Morbius. It was an attempt at horror, but they also attempted to go PG.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that was a mistake.
yeah.
DC, I want James Gunn to learn, like as well, that one of the things that makes DC work is that it is more dark, it is
Yeah.
more serious. So I want him to remember the legacy of DC, what it is compared to Marvel. Marvel is it's like one has the light switch on and one has the light switch off. It's really, in terms of the way that they set their movies. I would like to say, like, James Gunn, lean into the legacy of DC, like build upon that. Um, and don't worry about the R rating. And I think he doesn't
I don't
worry
think
about
he
the R
worries
rating.
about the
I
R
don't think
rate.
we're too worried. I'm not too worried about that. But I'd also like to see him make some younger generation stuff too.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
I'm
sure.
worried that,
Yeah.
yeah, so that there is, it's not just all dark.
No, 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 no,
That'd be
no.
bad too. So, have a bit of that, flexibility. But um, I would like to see, yeah, that he just makes these sort of more serious movies that really capture the tone of DC. One of the things that I would say
Yeah,
is
I
even,
want to see a Superman movie that's all about hope and
oh yeah, I want to see that. Yeah,
humanity's
yeah, yeah.
good, and
That should
I
be
want to feel good.
PG. That should be PG.
I want a
Yeah,
feel good Superman movie. I want Christopher Reeve back. I want to
yeah,
feel
yeah,
good
yeah,
about a
yeah.
man flying through the air.
Yeah, and sort of that sweet, innocent stuff
Yeah,
again. Yeah,
yeah,
I'd love to see that.
yeah.
Um, but what I was going to say is like, DC does one thing really well, and not many people realize how well that they do this. Is there, if you ever watch their animated movies, they're actually brilliant. They're generally really awesome. Like I've enjoyed pretty much all of the DC animated movies. I don't know why that when they go into the live action, they can't have that same quality and same, like,
I
seriousness.
suspect it's because too many people interfere. I suspect with the animation stuff, It's probably a small team of 3 or 4 people who are directing it. Nobody else is very interested, and the creators get to do what they want to do. Whereas when you get one of these big budget live action
Yeah,
things,
you got too many people.
every committee under the sun at DC is going to be getting involved and saying, "Oh, you can't do that because of this, that, and the other," and it all gets
Yeah,
diluted down, and then your plot line goes this way, and then it goes that way, and then it.
yeah, that's another thing that I would remove from all of the companies. If not just Kevin Feige, James Gunn, any company out there. I've noticed that lately with movies in general, they'll do two big things. They'll do like this sort of creation by committee. You know what I mean? Where they'll get a committee of people. They all kind of say, okay, I want to get this little agenda in here. Oh, can you do this? I'd like this, and they kind of put all their little pieces together, and that's somehow going to be a good movie. And then they even make it worse because they add a second layer of a committee where they do these test screenings, right? And they say, oh, the audience like that, therefore we gotta hype up that and downplay, and it just becomes like, pandering slash it just becomes like a muddle mess instead of anything that's coherent. So I would actually say let's get rid of all those little committees. And again, to your point that you made, I thought your point was awesome. Leverage the true visionaries
Yeah.
and like folk, let them carry their vision forward.
Yeah,
Because
I
I
mean,
think,
it's like Neil Gaiman tells a story about when they were trying to recruit the guy to play Sandman. Yeah,
mhm,
and the guy they got to play Sandman, I thought was amazing. He
was
looked like
perfect.
Sandman,
Yeah,
and he can act, right?
mhm,
And I think he was the second person who came in for audition,
mhm,
and Neil was there, and everybody who sat in that audition said, "That's our Sandman." Yeah.
yeah,
And Netflix said, no, 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 no. We need to see at least 500 people. Yeah. Um,
mhm,
anyway, 6 months later and 500 auditions and goodness knows how much money later, they went for the
mhm.
guy that Neil had said, that's the guy you need to play Sandman. You can cut through some of this corporate rubbish. You can, when it's,
Exactly.
you need to listen to the creators sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
Not
And I mean
always,
that,
not always.
yeah, not
Sometimes
always. They can mess up too,
they can, yeah.
but at least the people that have the vision and understand the characters, and if those characters are loved, like if you have a crappy character, crappy vision, don't even bother with that. But if you have a good vision, like Neil Gaiman has a great vision. He has a great, his great sense of characters and all that. Leverage that. Just trust your creators. So yeah, I'm kind of building on the point that you made in a way, but I just think getting rid of those committees, getting rid of that kind of like voting within, like where they kind of get too many people involved. I think that's something
Yeah,
that needs to be done.
designed by committee. Yeah.
The design by committee. Yeah, I hate that. So that's my last point. So do you have any more points?
I think I've given James Gunn enough advice. You know, he's
He
not
has to
paying me
pay us
any money
for any
for all
more.
this advice. Uh,
Yeah,
he probably earns more than I earned in my lifetime in a year. So,
yeah,
uh,
exactly.
I've given it this advice for free. James, if you're out there and you're watching and you want to send me some money, for managing to get all these ideas out of Allan and myself, then we'll be open to that.
That'd be great. Yeah, I think that'd be the last point that I'd make. James Gunn should send us a check. He doesn't know why, but he just should do that. That should just be
Yeah, and of the
a
suggestions that we've just made, I think that's the least likely one to happen.
probably.
Okay, so that's it for this week. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you've got any ideas, what you would do if you were James Gunn, just arrived in at DC, put them below, because we'll if they're really bad, we'll make fun of you, and if they're really good, we'll give you a pat on the back.
Mhm.
So that's it for this week. See you again soon.